And we are live. Look at that. That was the smoothest transition we've ever had.
Yep.
Really. Welcome, everyone, to episode 34 of Three Pagans on Tap, The Return of the Goat, which is what I should have named the episode according to Josie, but I didn't because I didn't think of it at the time.
Oh. Oops.
Cheers, everybody.
It's open.
Cheers. Ooh. So, did you want to start off with the prayer?
Yeah, let me go ahead and get started with that. We've actually already got people in the chat, which is awesome. All right.
Damn. Yes, we do.
Yeah. Also, I apologize. I am clearing my throat and coughing a lot. I'm getting over COVID. I'm okay, but yeah. Hail to the bloody mothers, Babylon, Angerbotha, and more, goddess of earth, blood, and bone. Praise be to you, O mothers of monsters all told. You give birth to us again and again, and give us shelter neath your wings yet. O holy mothers, watch over your children, the outcast and the downtrodden. Be with us in these hallowed, harrowed times. May we never need your fury, your ecstasy more. Pack warm us and keep us all. Thus do I. So, how's everyone doing tonight?
Pretty good. Thank you. It was a pretty busy Samhain / Halloween. I worked a double, and my wife took the kids out for trick-or-treating with some family friends. And apparently everybody had a really good time, although my son played more the part of a border collie than a plague doctor. Trying to corral the two children and keep them somewhat in line and keep the older one from wearing out the younger one. So,
like you do.
Good times.
We have actually a lot of people in the chat. We've got Elle,
Hello.
Emily, Finn made it.
Yay!
Woo!
Jason made it, and come on, computer. There we go.
Indy.
So did Indy. Hey, y'all.
Love your avatar, Indy.
I feel bad for everyone who didn't get to see Finn's Samhain Halloween getup because it was legendary. It's good.
It was genuinely fantastic. Okay.
Oh man.
So,
but yeah.
What is everyone drinking tonight?
A lot.
To cut you off.
I'm drinking Argentinian Malbec from 2020. You can tell that I got this for free from a person who understands how to get drinking wine because it's boasting that it only has 91 points on the wine scale and it's a twist top. So this is the people's wine.
How about you, Sarenth? What are you drinking?
Well, in my defense, Meyer was having a sale, and so stuff that was normally $20 was going for $9. So I bought a shitload. So I've got a few.
Oh boy.
Hang on. Thank you, darling.
Bud.
This is Carlo Rossi Raspberry Sangria, which is right here. This is amazing. I love a good sangria.
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Said you want to talk about the people's wine, Carlo Rossi.
Farm Fresh Blackberry Moscato. These were both chilled before I got them, so I like them a lot.
Too sweet.
That's the blueberry.
This is the blueberry. Oh, this is the Farm Fresh blueberry.
Mm-hmm.
Damn, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you, sweetie.
Yeah.
And I'm also drinking Menage a Trois Dolce Sweet Red Blend. I don't know if I'm going to crack into the other ones, but these are all really excellent.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's, of course, Livingston Red Rosé, rather. There's the Farm Fresh Apple. And then there's Leelanau Cellars Winter White, which I picked up because I like the bottle. It looked pretty. It's a semi-sweet white table wine. So
I wouldn't have pegged you for a sweet reds guy.
I don't much care for dries.
All right.
I mean, I'm a mead guy, so like the sweeter the better, right?
Yeah, it makes sense now that I think about it. But yeah,
Ooh,
I
yes.
really think that sweet wines have like a bad rap that they don't deserve.
Yeah, there we go. That's the
There you
cherry,
go.
and that's the Moscato with blueberry in it.
Yep.
Good
Okay,
shit.
Stop chilling then.
Still chilling them? Gotcha. But yes, definitely a was $20, now $9 because they're trying to get rid of their stock before the winter stock comes in all the way.
Yep.
Yeah. Jason cries and Shiraz lover.
I take it that's a really dry wine.
Shiraz
pretty
is a drier wine.
Argentinian Malbec.
This is
Yeah.
like a go-to if you want to look fancy but you don't have a lot of cash, because it's this big berry red that's on the drier side of things. People love to buy Malbecs and Zinfandels for poetry readings.
I mean, yeah.
I am what you call relatively uncultured when it comes to wine. This is probably literally the most wine I've ever bought in one sitting, and almost all of it was on sale. Which, there's nothing wrong with sales, but it's just this is actually me widening my palate, because I don't usually buy Moscato, I don't usually buy Pinots, I don't usually buy much besides meads in terms of wines.
And then when I was being taught about wine when I worked at a wine distributor, what I was told is the point of knowing about wine is not to buy the most fancy or expensive wine or to have what they call a distinguished palate. It's to be able to walk into the wine store, know what you're going to enjoy, and buy it.
Yep.
Honestly, that's the same thing that I say with beer. Like, I don't really experiment with beer anymore. It's not worth it. Like, I buy the things that I know that I like, or the things that are by companies that I know I will enjoy because they make a good product. I'm not going to experiment. I have had too much bad beer and too much amazing beer. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to drink what I like. I'm too old for that shit.
Whoops. I insisted on chilling some of the sweeter wines before drinking them. Yes, and that was a good call.
Yeah, sweet wines tend to want to be colder. Although I'm with Cabra, I tend towards the like middle dry reds, not the very dry reds. I don't want to taste ash like Jason does, but he likes it. More power to him.
Yeah, sell wine chase is good.
Yep.
Yeah, when I'm actually shopping for myself, I do tend to get those big berry reds, especially from like Argentina, Spain, and Portugal. But like, I'll try other stuff just because I also like to drink it to know how it tastes, right? Like the novelty is part of the fun. But then I also end up drinking a lot of California cabs. And then I drink a lot of Italian reds because that's what my partner likes. So the other day, I actually did a Babylon ritual, and during our prep work, she was like, "You, magician, wine, the good stuff." And I was like, "Yes, ma'am." So I finally knocked a $60 Italian Barolo off my bucket list. And it is so dry, but it was great because I've gotten my palate to a point where I can tell when am I paying $60 for actual quality and when am I paying $60 just to pay $60.
Right.
there's levels of how complex the flavor is that really is what you're going for when you're paying more money for these wines. And it was really nice to have that study and that enjoyment of it really pay off on what was a delicious wine. So
Josie says Sarenth is wine dining his palate. Yeah.
widening.
Oh, widening. Oh, widening. Nice. Same thing with beer. Yeah, I agree. Like what the point you made earlier with regards to beer is the same thing I make with regards to whiskey. Mm-hmm. After a certain point, either you know what you're going to like and what you're not going to like, or you're going to fucking hate it.
Yep.
Like, there's really no in between after a certain point where you actually refine your palate.
Yeah. No, there is, you get more quality when you pay more money a lot of the time, but a lot of the time you also don't. A lot of the time you're just paying for a name or you're paying for a fancy label. Case in point, actually, I'm going to say this to the wine person who is also Brazilian, and it's going to be bad, but it's fine. I am drinking a $11 port, and this is actually the favorite port I've ever had, and I've had $30, $40 ports. I couldn't tell you that there's a significant difference. Like, is there a difference? A little bit, but yeah. And do I buy the $11 instead of the $5? Yes.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I love a boxed wine. I love an economy wine, right? Like there's many of my favorite wines are in the like $10 to $15 range. I will not drink Yellowtail. It is like instant headache. I cannot, and I try to save my friends from it. But I'll drink a Robert Mondavi. I don't care. I don't have anyone to impress.
The thing that I hear all the time for a Yellowtail is, oh, it's a good cooking wine. I'm like, if I'm not going to drink it, I'm not going to fucking cook with it.
But yeah, I am real cheap when it comes to beer, though. I am like if I can, I'll get a Mexican lager, but those American lagers, the economy ones, like I'll drink an Iron City, I'll drink a Narragansett, I'll drink a Budweiser in a pinch. Like I understand that I have cheap taste in beer, and I'm not sorry.
No, that's legit.
Yeah.
Like my taste in whiskey is incredibly cheap, and the only reason that has been upset at all is because of my father-in-law, whose taste in whiskey is not cheap.
Oh, that actually reminds me. Probably around Yule, I'm gonna start busting out my good Irish whiskeys again. So you'll have to come over and
okay. Yeah, to hurt my heart.
Yep. Are y'all okay if we start diving into some of the questions, because we got a lot of really good ones?
Let's do it.
Thing.
All right, I'm gonna start with my favorite just because I really like it. So this 2 questions from Snow for Cabra. 1, where do you fit on your scale and why? And where would you place Maleck and Sarenth?
So for context, for people who haven't watched the video, I put a video up on my YouTube about how I define witchcraft, and I define it as being related to 2 axes, 4 quadrants. It's not a you go in a box thing. It's like these are 4 descriptive terms for what you generally do. Think of them as sliders, blah, 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 right? So it's taboo breaking versus taboo keeping. And then it's rich people magic versus like poor people magic, right? And then I define witchcraft as being taboo breaking and poor people magic. And I put myself in the bougie magic that also is taboo breaking, which is sorcery, right? Mm-hmm. So that is where I put myself. Like I do bougie magic at this point. I just spent $60 or $70 on a set of bells. I have a tendency to plan some of my workings months or years in advance. I have the luck to have a closet that's literally just the closet where I do my spiritual work and my day job, and that's it. No one else walks in there. It's my own little space. And if I want to do a fire burn outside and invite some friends over for a drum circle, I can. I don't have to carve sigils into a piece of paper and then burn them in my tiny studio apartment. Like that magic is just as effective. It's just I like fancy things. So I have definitively crossed over into the land of bougie. But I remember what it was like where you're just like, oh, I need to pay off bills. I need $50 and I have to use what I already have in my apartment.
I feel that.
Maleck and Sarenth are interesting. I would place both of you on the, I know this is going to sound weird, but I would place both of you on the like non-bougie side of things, on like the poor people magic side of things, just because I think both of you are, my impression of your practice is that it's not super heavy for, resources. Like, you have a couple specialized tools, but it seems like the most specialized thing about either of your practices is like the habits and relationships you've been building up over the years, right? I don't ever hear y'all talk about, oh, I spent $150 on a pelt. Oh, I spent, you did.
I dropped $1,000 on a pelt.
So did I.
But please keep going. This sounds great.
Okay, so question then. Aside from the pelts, do either of you engage in like bougie expensive tools for your craft, or
even when I was doing ceremonial magic, most of my shit was made out of paper.
That was the vibe that I got.
Not really for myself. Like, the majority of the things that I use are either things that have been gifted to me, or yeah, that's pretty much it.
So aside from the pelt, which in a different time and place you might have inherited or hunted for instead of having to pay up cash for it, right?
Right,
like,
true.
Both of you are using things that are pretty accessible to the general public and to people who have limited resources. The question that gets complicated is, are you taboo breaking or taboo keeping?
Yes.
And both of you have the problem where, are we judging you based off of America 2022, in which case you, like general American population 2022, in which case you would be taboo breakers and I would put you in the witchcraft corner? Or if we judge you by your own ethical worldview, then I would say that Sarenth is definitively a taboo keeper, right? Because everything about you radiates this sort of like, you cross boundaries, but you have an ethical code that puts the community first. And that's something that I see you keep to in ritual quite a bit, right? I wouldn't surprise me if Sarenth did something like crossing gender lines, or like crossing lines between the living and the dead. But I've never seen you go against this idea of a community first ethos, right? Maleck, I know that pack magic is something that you're still kind of hashing out with the other people who feel called to it. So I would put you as undecided on that particular spectrum.
That's legit.
Yeah. I wanted to point out a couple of comments in the chat. One-time expense. Yes, and to be fair, I bought this pelt like 6 or 7 years ago. And if you're looking for a pelt, you're looking especially for one that's for dancing or for ritual wear, I highly recommend Lupa Greenwolf. Her work is amazing. It's impeccable. I have taken this pelt dancing in front of blazing bonfires. I have taken this pelt into the deepest of cold. It has survived all of it. Her work is impeccable.
Score.
Yeah.
Indeed. Excuse me.
Years of spirit work for one big purchase. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Also, I laughed when I read this. Looks at Sarenth and knife. To be fair, I have a lot of blade tools. But they all get you. That's the thing. Like, it's not like I collect these ritual tools and they sit on a shelf. They're actually tools.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a marked difference between some of the ritual tools I was looking at as a ceremonial magician. Like, this has one purpose. It's made out of gold. And then it's used for nothing else. It's like, holy shit. Or like all the stuff made out of brass or bronze.
My ritual knife is just a knife I found in the hunting section of a sports store that I could afford way back before I got like the bougie person money. And I had just like regular young 20-something cash. And I've been using it for like a decade plus now, and it works just fine. And I can't think of any reason why I would replace it. I've even purchased other things I could potentially use as ceremonial blades, but I'm just like, I'm used to this one. We have an understanding. We have a relationship, you know. But I do definitely keep the ceremonial magic taboo of that knife is for ritual purposes and only ritual purposes. It does two things: collecting herbs that are to be used in ritual and like drawing boundaries. That's it.
That's legit.
Yeah. People are sharing their ritual knife stories in the chat.
Mm-hmm. Your fanciest tools for the most part, Sarenth, have been gifts, pipes, raven knife, etc. That's okay. You know what? That's a really valid point. Most of the stuff that I use for ritual, like my pipe, most of these have been gifts. Most of these have been like the ritual knives I have, the raven knife I have, all gifts. I think the pelt is one of the few ritual items I have actually bought for myself. I got even my runes, my iron runes that I use were gifted to me. And I think that using what you got at hand is a totally valid way of doing things. My ritual knives tend to see multiple uses. My raven knife has served as both a box cutter and as a ritual tool. I think having a dedicated ritual tool is a perfectly fine thing, especially if you can afford it.
Yeah.
But so many of my tools are working tools because they do a lot of double duty.
I think it also depends on your practice, right? Like if I met a kitchen witch who wasn't also cooking with their ritual knife, I would have questions, right? I think it's mostly because I'm working out of the old grimoires that I keep this particular taboo. It's very specific to my lineage. And if someone came and was my like student for some reason, which that's a spicy decision, but like I won't stop you. Like I would turn to them and be like, the one rule about that knife, I don't care if it's a butter knife, I don't care if it's a plastic cutlery knife, I'm like, wherever you get it is fine. I just need plausible deniability, and I need you to only use it for ritual purposes, just because that's so important to like the lineage. There's so many tools in the grimoires where they're like, wrap it in silk and place it in a deep dark crevice, right? You must put your ritual knife wrapped in silk up God's own asshole.
I mean, yeah. I'm really glad that you can make fun of your own tradition, because like it's important. If you can't, mock yourself a little bit, you take it seriously.
Yeah.
And that goes for everybody, myself included. Like
Sorry, you lost me on the shoving your knife up God's asshole and leaving it there.
We're all just like, yep, about that. It's really funny. I've said this on my blog a couple times, I think. My relationship with ritual tools is kind of odd, because I end up accumulating a lot of tools through gifts and just kind of stuff.
Jesus fucking Christ, Jason. God has a shiv in the prison pocket. Got
it. Listen, the book of the law says, I am a god of war and vengeance, all right? Like, however you have to attain the vengeance.
The prison pocket's fucking killing me.
Maleck, are we good enough friends that I can joke about you having a ritual wolf onesie?
Yes, we are. And given that, I actually also very recently purchased the dancing wolf skin from Lupa Green Wolf as well. It's we are kink up sub units deity's kink.
Oh god.
All right, we knew what episode it was going to be, like when we set it up. Like, it's fine.
Do we want to grab another question?
Yeah, because otherwise I'm going to start showing off my knives at this point.
let me
I
get
left
this
all
thought
my
out
knives
real
upstairs.
quick.
This is what I have a shot for.
My relationship with ritual tools is really interesting because I end up accumulating a lot of them, and they're very important to me because I build relationships with the tools themselves. Like a lot of people around me, like involved with my practice, have noted that like no, like objects wake up around you and talk to you way more than they do to other people, which is interesting. But also I tend to prefer to do most of my magic and practice empty-handed. Like I don't actually like to use these tools very often. I will in specific contexts. Like there's a couple that I use in the rituals I do on the new moon every month, but other than that, I generally don't like to use tools. So it's this odd kind of like, I don't need a tool. I am the magic. And also, but I like all these things. They're my friends.
I cannot believe someone just mentioned the poop knife. Who did that? I'm simultaneously so proud and so disappointed in you.
I had forgotten
Don't
that
explain
was a
it.
thing.
Make people Google that one. You have to
Yep.
Google that one and suffer like we suffered.
Being from the bowels of the internet, literally. Yep. That one. Enjoy. None of us did.
After party next show, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. Okay, bet.
We are not doing an after party poop knife show.
No, we're gonna make people Google that on their own time.
Yep.
Google the poop knife. It's good praxis.
Do you want praxis or do you want wine questions, Cabra?
Let's break it up with a wine question and then we'll get back to praxis.
All right. Let's say this is coming from Jason. Any particular region preference? Doesn't need to be a country, but if you have a specific, that is great.
I already answered this one. Iberia and similar climates.
Completely fair.
Mm-hmm.
And have you / do you enjoy volcanic wines?
I have never heard of this until today. So I will Google it and get back to you. But it's on the to-do list now.
Very nice. More wine or moving on to metaphysics?
Let's go back to metaphysics. That was a good palate cleanser. Let's get back into it.
All right. Sarenth, you pick a question, unless you don't have it up, and then I can.
I don't have it up, but give me 5 seconds. 3-pot questions. Yes, there we go. Click the fucking thing, Sarenth. There we go.
Vesuvius. All right. I see you, Jason.
Ooh, that does sound tasty. Wow. Let's go with who's one deity you vibe strongly with but have never worked with?
That's also a good question.
And that question comes to us courtesy of L.
I got to think of that one because what my brain wants to do is interpret that question as a deity you want to work with but can't, which is Dionysus. Love them. Had a month-long panic attack the one time I tried to have them on my altar. We don't gel. I love and respect them deeply, but I can't. But that wasn't the question, right? It's deity that I want to work with and haven't yet.
Side note, this Dolce Ménage à Trois sweet red blend is fucking amazing.
Nice.
Very good.
It would probably be a deity in the pantheon I currently work with because I haven't gotten a lot of resonance with deities outside this pantheon, which is why I ended up here in the first place. Who haven't I had time for or haven't had research for? You know what? Astaroth. I know whether or not she's a deity, we could debate for the next hour, but she's going to be my answer because both of the times I have pinged her, she has basically been like, get good and then come see me. right? Like,
Damn, just
I
lay it
went to
down.
her the first time to be like, hey, does this circle setup work? I heard that you talk to beginners sometimes. And she's like, you are cold and miserable sitting on the floor in a basement that smells like butts and is very cold. Don't talk to me like this. And I was just like, yes, ma'am. I guess the day didn't work. I mean, that's the answer to my question. Don't do that. And then the other time I tried to ask her, being like, hey, she's like, no. You solve that problem by yourself. And when you have solved it, I will help you keep it solved. And I was just like, yes, ma'am.
So, because I am wildly unfamiliar, can you tell me a bit about Astaroth?
Oh, yeah. Astaroth's a demon. Pretty popular one in various circles that work with demons, especially people who respect them.
Mm-hmm.
It is fairly, to this day, I haven't seen a scholarly reference for this, but it is fairly assumed that she inherits her name and a lot of her stuff from Astarte, who was a Mesopotamian goddess and kind of one of the last holdouts of polytheism in the Israelite tribes before they truly became henotheistic in like the first temple period-ish. And then there's a book called The Hebrew Goddess by Patai that goes into her in detail, or at least into Astarte in detail. Whether or not Astaroth is Astarte or just inherits from her is like another one of those questions where I'm like, I must know the answer. And she keeps telling me, you're a sad man. No.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
That actually goes really well into another question, which is how involved does your work get with the Mediterranean melting pot of older religions?
I understand that the religion that I draw, the sources that I draw from, have a melting pot aspect to them. And because I am a modern day person looking back into this past, I have a tendency to separate these things out a lot, right? So like when you go to the PGM and you look at the Bornless rite, in theory, which I could be doing something from the Greek magical papyri, which is deeply embedded in the root of this entire Mediterranean grimoire practice, and grab it and do it exactly as is, and no one can tell me I don't have the cultural access to that for various reasons. But it's just not cogent to my experience as a human being living in 2022, working in the situation that I'm in, to like do that, because it's not like I can sit here and rattle off the name of like gods from 5 or 6 different pantheons and feel connected to them, or like I'm really building up energy. It feels like I'm trying to move my radio between too many stations at once. So I recognize that that's me putting my separation of these things backward onto history, but that doesn't change that that's my experience, right? So one thing I will say, though, is that the astrological magic that I do is inspired by a lot of the Picatrix, and that's a deeply cross-cultural text, right? Like I'm using the English translation of the Latin translation from Christian Iberia. They got it from Al-Andalus. Al-Andalus got it from Central North Africa. They are drawing on an older tradition that's trying to adopt from the Nabatean agriculture, which is supposedly related as far back as ancient Babylon, but actually seems to come from about the magical Greek papyri period, or like just after like the Christianization of pagan Rome. And so it's like a whole cross-cultural thing. And as someone who's interested in Iberia and the Mediterranean, I'm never going to separate out what's Islamic or Muslim or what's indigenous North African from what's from like Northern Iberia and like post Al-Andalus Christian ruled areas of the continent, right? So there's an amount of cross-pollination that is not only inevitable but needs to be recognized. And then there's some places where I actually do kind of tease things out, but that's part of the adaptation to the modern experience. So, do I need to explain any jargon? I feel like I may have accidentally jargoned.
I understood for the most part. Like, there's a couple of books you referenced that I don't know, but that's fine. Sarenth is actually probably more familiar than me. I'm not sure though. It's one of the problems of like a bunch of experts in the room.
If it makes you feel any better, most of the time when I'm giving book examples, it's not. I hope that the sentence will still parse if you're not familiar with the books.
Yes.
Mostly because in case that one bro cultist shows up and is like, which dead guy are you quoting? I am quoting a specific dead guy. It's a survival tactic. I can't turn it off.
No, you're good. And no, like you made perfect sense, even though I don't know like the names of a couple of the books. That's fine.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing about all of this is that this shit was convoluted back when it was being used, and it has only gotten more so over time because of the mishmash of cultures and references and everything else, that in order to unfold all the different correspondences, you have to know at least 3 languages. And the long and the short of it is that your average user of the PGM didn't know at least 2 of them, and probably didn't know the written version all that well to start with of whatever was their home culture. Like, sometimes the barbarous names work because they're barbarous.
It's the line of inheritance that carries the power just as much as the name in and of itself. And like, even when I say the name Astaroth, right? Like, also gets pronounced Astareth. And then when we get more into these demon names, right? Like, there are 15 different demons whose names you can trace back to Baal Hadad. And I'm mispronouncing things because I don't study this language. But Baal or Baal Hadad being kind of the Marduk of the Canaanites, right? The like storm god that conquers the ancient chaos water serpent, right? The chaos conf, if you'll pardon the phrase. And then there's like 15 demons that all draw their name from that one entity, but now they're separate demons and they're very different from each other. And so it's like, nope, completely forgot what I was doing. Shoot.
Well, it's kind of a chicken and the egg problem, right? Because like, even if you trace back and go, this is exactly where this comes from, this is definitely Baal Hadad. Cool. That means jack and shit when you're doing demonology.
Yeah. And that's also like, you can trace the linguistics and you can trace the like influences, but that doesn't necessarily tell you about the history of the entity, because whether or not the entity existed before we had a name for them is absolutely an open question, right?
It's a chicken now.
Yeah.
Argue with its provenance, if you will.
Right. And there's an idea, and there's like, you can't just erase all the history that happened between 2022 and like 2000 BC, right?
Right.
Like, that history happened and it's connecting you to this thing, but the thing changes as its relationship with humans, the relationship that this spirit or spirits has with humans changes. So it could be that there's just 15 names and they're all going to this one spiritual call center, and Baal Hadad is just sitting there with all of his little dead guy helpers being like, yeah, you want me to curse who? You want a job? You want to get married? I'm on it, right?
I can't remember if it was on HGF or another show, but there was a point somebody made about there being different translations for who is this duke or who is that prince. And some people chalk that up to translation errors. And then it's like, well, if these are living spirits, why wouldn't the hierarchy change on occasion?
It was AGF. It was the TikTok guy, Chaos Magician.
Oh, yeah, that was Gaia Sorcery.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I recently re-listened to that episode, and that part really did stick with me quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it could also be at this point that the name starts with Baal Hadad, and then it separates out into 15 different entities. But at the end of the day, it kind of doesn't matter. You've got 15 different phone numbers. You know which ones to call for what, so you just pick up the phone.
Yep.
Something, Cabra, that you've mentioned a number of times in kind of different contexts is the inheritance, both of like the inheritance of the practice and inheritance of like deities and demons and spirits inheriting from predecessors. And And that's really tickling a part of my brain. And I had a question, but it's gone. Goddamn ADHD. But it's an interesting topic of kind of where does the relationship and where does the power come from? And those are separate things, but obviously related. Specifically, where does our relationships with the divine come from in terms of like inheritance versus new relationships and things like that?
So part of the reason why I use the phrase inheritance is because I want to leave that line fuzzy of like, are these the same entity or are they the same? And also to kind of leave the theology fuzzy, because I don't think nailing down one person's theology is necessarily helpful to like working together in ritual and actually having a community relationship as opposed to an individual relationship with these deities, right? Mm-hmm. Like we're all supposed to have different experiences of the divine. Mm-hmm. It's very obviously a natural part of the phenomenon, right? And the mystics are very clear across cultures that there is something that will never be pinned down about that experience of connectivity with divinity, and that's a feature, not a bug, right? So I purposefully try to use inheritance because it leaves things really ambiguous, so that hopefully people who don't have the same theology as me, but that are in community with me relating to these same entities, will still be able to parse the sentence in the way that works for them.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me.
But my answer as to, I feel like you asked two, I feel like the question you were asking, or the question I heard was, where does the power come from? Like what's being inherited really? Like let's tease that question out a little.
Yeah, I think you nailed it actually. Because to be completely honest, I wasn't absolutely sure what I was asking. I was just kind of speaking. But yeah, I think you kind of nailed it. Is what is being inherited, and by whom, right? Because there's kind of two things that you talk about with some frequency, is both the inheritance of the divine through names, but also the inheritance of the practitioner through lineage and through, I'll just leave it at lineage because I think that's a broad enough descriptor.
Yeah. You know what's really hilarious is that I have been saying inheritance specifically when it comes to entities and feasts and what have you, but thinking about the way that I use inheritance for lineage, like I hadn't made that jump yet, because I'm so used to saying like, I inherit a lineage. Aleister Crowley is part of that lineage. Doreen Valiente is part of that lineage, right? I'm probably going to be reading Ida Craddock soon, which is going to be exciting because I heard that she's real spicy. But it's a thing of like, it hadn't occurred to me, and yet it still tracks. Like the way that I use inheritance when I'm very purposefully using it to disrupt the traditional language pattern, or like the assumed language pattern, is actually still tracks with the inheritance of a lineage, especially a magical one. Because it still leaves that room for ambiguity of like, are you inheriting like an energy current, a set of practices, a ghost that's going to start haunting you and giving you advice, like something.
All of the above.
All of the above.
Yeah, that's interesting. As we all sit in silence and just think for a second, but
I think I'm going to ask another question. I had one queued up. Lingo question. This one's from Jason. I have heard that Abrahamic religions is a term being phased out. I was wondering if you had insight on that topic.
Yes. I am definitely in favor of phasing it out. But the thing I've heard more discourse on and that I think we definitely need to be talking about is phasing out the phrase Judeo-Christian. Because, right, I'm going to say the quiet part out loud so that we can all hear the like delusion that they're trying to convince us of, right? There is a concept in anti-Semitic branches of Christianity that Jewish people are basically just really bad at being Christian, right? Like Jewishness as a concept doesn't exist to these people. It's a bad form of Christianity. Their idea being that the second covenant, which is the covenant of Christ, replaces the first covenant, which is the covenant of the Israelites, right? And so when you say Judeo-Christian, it's basically continuing this narrative that Judaism ends with Jesus of Nazareth, and that anything that claims to be Judaism after Jesus of Nazareth is in fact a false religion and a devil worshiping one at that, right? So that's the thing I'm definitely like on. I almost said a crusade. bad.
Maybe don't, but
no, we're no crusades. My ancestors have done enough crusades for one planet. That's enough crusades for one solar system. Maybe if we get to a different galaxy, we'll like try and bring it back. But
maybe you could have a little crusade as a treat.
No.
The only crusade I will be going on is against dust bunnies under my bed. All right, like that's as far. But yeah, that's the Judeo-Christian word is definitely something that I'm going after. But I think that the phrase Abrahamic kind of does the same thing because it takes Christianity, Judaism, and Islam and it scoops them up. And usually when someone says Abrahamic, they mean a more technical term, but they don't know which more technical term to use because they've been robbed of the ability to have a more useful language. So sometimes people say Abrahamic and what they mean is monotheistic. And then you don't mean every single Jewish person or every single Christian or right. I don't think I've actually met a non-monotheistic Muslim. So maybe, I don't think henotheistic Islam is a thing. But yeah, so it's a thing of like, but there's also monotheistic people outside those three religions. And sometimes you mean those people also. And weirdly enough, like most people I've met who do Haitian Vodou are also technically monotheistic because they believe that creator is the only God and everything else is spirits, right?
Yep.
So it's a thing of like, sometimes people mean monotheism, but sometimes what people mean is Christianity and the guys we think are cool, even though they're not Christian, right? Like they're on a team of like our guys and they mean my team instead of like, or my tribe instead of like, well, tribe, instead of like Judeo-Christian or Abrahamic, right? So I think that Abrahamic needs to be replaced by more specific terminology, but this requires mainstreaming more specific terminology in a way that pushes back against a lot of the like weird, like hegemonically Christian things that we talk about in the States in 2022, right?
Yeah, I also wanted to point this comment out because I think it kind of nails it. Jewishness seems to be idolized by Christians while Jews are looked down upon as less advanced.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and she puts the caveat by some Christians. I would say that Christianity doesn't work without this dynamic as it exists in the modern day.
Yeah.
I would agree, yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that's really interesting is that there's actually a perfect key example in the center of the Christian faith for how to handle the relationship between Christianity and Judaism that they just absolutely blow over all the time. And it's the Eucharist, right?
Yep.
The Eucharist has its origin in the Passover Seder, but it is not a Passover Seder. So you can say Jesus gave us the Eucharist at a Passover Seder, but we don't do Passover, we do Easter. And instead, you've got people constantly being like, and this is why Jewish people shouldn't do Passover, and this is why we should actually have a Passover Seder, but make it Christian instead of doing Easter and the Eucharist. And it's like, no, stop doing this. It was Passover, and Jewish people still do Passover. You're Christian, so you do Easter and the Eucharist. You have your thing, they have theirs. Your thing started as their thing, but that was 2,000 plus years ago. Let it go.
Yeah. And that's honestly the simple way to put it, in my opinion, is most of the time when people say Abrahamic or Judeo-Christian, they just mean Christian, and generally they just mean evangelical Christian, and usually United States and evangelical Christian.
Yep.
But even if they don't mean that specific thing, they generally still just mean Christian, with no acknowledgement or knowledge of the ways that Judaism and Islam wildly differ from Christianity, especially as it is known today.
I think this is more of an issue in, and this might be my Catholic bias showing, I don't see these issues in the Catholic Church. And partly I think it's because there's enough fucking magic present in the Catholic Church that it satisfies a lot of people's itch for the mystical. Protestant Christianity is specifically a pushback against that, and it's looking to something for authenticity that isn't Rome.
Yes, but I think that even Roman Catholicism by itself is large enough that it's hard to put fine line. It's hard for that definition to apply broadly.
Sure. There's 2 billion Catholics.
Yeah, right. Like, it's not going to apply to everyone. And also, my experience, not being Catholic, but my experience with other Catholics has been decidedly the opposite.
Interesting.
I would honestly be hard pressed to tell you the difference between most of my personal interactions with Catholics versus even Christian Protestants. American Protestants, God, I can't talk tonight.
I honestly think at least some of that comes from post-Vatican II and the Protestantization of Catholicism.
Yeah. I guess my personal question about this, or I guess my pushback, is for the sake of oversimplification, because I'm about to go from drinking to tipsy, is Martin Luther nailed the 95 Theses to a church in 1517. So we could loosely make that the start of the Reformation. Right?
Sure.
Cool. For shorthand. The big issue of cultural appropriation of Judaism that I've always been deeply concerned about has been the Kabbalah. That has the way that Christians have treated the Kabbalah has been like the hill I am apparently going to set my army upon and defend for most of my career, or as small as it is, as like an occultist. That starts in Spain before the Alhambra decree. So that's in the 1400s that they start getting conversos to explain to them how Kabbalah works, and then writing it down and saying, and this is a line that's used up to Crowley, right? Like Alphonse Louis Constant, his French fucker, is still quote parroting this line that the Jews discovered it and the Catholics perfected it, right? That without Christ, you can't have the true Kabbalah. I recycled the history of magic. I put it in the recycle bin as soon as I read that page. And now I kind of wish I'd have kept it, because every once in a while I feel like sitting here like, did I imagine this? Did this happen? I need the page number so I can tell people. But yeah, that for me is definitely the big thing that I'm concerned with. But more mainstream examples of Christians taking things from Jewish people and then claiming, the Jews started it, but we fixed it, I think it's less of a mainstream Catholic thing pre-Reformation and more of like a rich people doing bougie things with their fancy book learning behind closed doors for like a hot minute.
So there's a good exchange going on in the chat that I kind of want to point out. There is mysticism in some sorts of Protestantism, those who speak in tongues and such. L says, agree, there's a whole lot of variability in Protestantism, but I do speak as a former Catholic, so I might be misinformed. I'm a former Protestant, and I approve this message. Thanks, I appreciate it. You got the Frozen Chosen, the Holy Rollers, all Protestant, and both think the other's not legit. Yeah, there's a wide diversity of Protestantism. That's a good point because most modern hoodoo comes out of a largely Protestant, if I remember correctly, milieu. And there's also interplay between Catholicism and Native religion and all. It's a big melting pot for that discipline of magic / spirituality.
I don't know who coined the term Frozen Chosen, but I'm so grateful to Eleanor right now for introducing me to it because using it. I'm definitely going to take that one and run with it. So thank you, neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's. We just had a JW come and try to evangelize to us, and that was very funny.
Oh my God. One of my favorite moments I've had with street preachers is I'm walking down a neighborhood in Pittsburgh, and there's these two nice Mormon boys, and they've got their backpacks and their button-up shirts and their tie and their thing, and they're like, have you heard of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? And I'm sorry, they didn't have Southern accents. I had the Southern accent at the time. But they're like, hey, have you heard of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? Have you read the Book of Mormon? And I was like, yep, read it. Didn't work for me. Thank you. Have a nice day. They were so baffled by the concept that I had read the book or that I had heard of their church. And my response was, no, thank you, instead of get the fuck off my lawn or just ignoring them, that they were like flabbergasted. Like I walked away from them and turned, but up until the turn, they were just like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man.
So apparently the Frozen Chosen is a particular brand of Presbyterians, which I didn't know, so that's interesting.
Frozen Chosen sounds like a fucking terrible dinner.
Or a Frozen the Movies fanfic, but we're going to...
Oh, God, no, please.
Oh,
Sven.
You can't get any worse than the Frozen fan fiction that already exists. Don't Google that one.
Yeah.
Google it with poop knife.
God damn it. Stop it.
Catholicism does have regular group ritual via mass that everyone participates in when they attend, even if they're unaware. That is very true.
Yeah. But also,
oh my God, fucking Calvinists.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Someone said Calvin. I have to take more wine.
Yes. Also, I do want to point out though that the ritual of Mass is specific to Catholicism, but the ritual of the Eucharist, or there's a couple of different names for it in different branches, communion is also very present in a lot of the Protestant. I was raised Lutheran, so like it's very, which is Catholic-like, but that's fine.
Yeah, I've always wanted to ask, how do Protestants do their Vorkink for Jesus? Like, what's the difference?
They're what?
They're Vorkink for Jesus. Like, what's the difference? I'm no longer sober.
I think that the Lutherans have to chew and then swallow. I think the Catholic thing is just to swallow it whole, right?
They never let me do it because I never got confirmed. And the one time I tried to go to Latin Mass, I got the worst stank eye. I could almost feel the ghost of my Portuguese grandmothers being like, "Você tem mal olhado, vai limpar. You got the evil eye on you now. You got to go take a shower."
So I'm not super familiar with Mass, but I can say I was confirmed Lutheran, so I'm pretty familiar with that. It is, from my understanding at least, it's a less intense ritual. There's less kind of formality to it, but there's absolutely a lot. There is still very much a sense of ritual to it. And it's, honestly, I would actually classify it absolutely, at least in the church that I was part of, I would call it an initiatory rite. You had to go through confirmation. You couldn't do that before a certain age. You had to pass the classes. You had to do X, Y, and Z. And if you were not confirmed and known to be confirmed, you were not permitted to participate. No, I don't think it's, like I said, I don't think it's as intense as a Catholic Mass, and it's obviously not done in Latin. But
suddenly occurs to me, and this never hit me before just now, but like at the EGC, when we do mass, you don't got to get baptized or confirmed to eat the God cracker. Like you can just show up, and we're just like, if you want to attempt to become one with divinity as you understand it via eating a little cake and having some wine, like if you're over 21 in the United States, we'll give it to you today. Don't care.
I do want to point out this one real quick. I think only Roman Catholics and Orthodox variants believe in transubstantiation. No. That was a thing in the Lutheran church that I was part of. It was transubstant. It wasn't called transubstantiation, but it was the same thing.
There's really only one question that really matters when it comes to delineation of churches, because in my head, there's only two kinds of church. There's you have a Mary statue and you don't have a Mary statue.
We did not have a Mary statue.
Well, then I ain't going.
Here I thought was that Jesus comes in your mouth versus doesn't. Comes to life in your mouth. Jesus fucking Christ.
Well, I mean, Jesus comes in your mouth as Jesus fucking Christ, so it's...
That's the holy chrism.
Still a little gay for Jesus. Today we learned.
Anyway.
Because he's hung like this.
Look, if we weren't going to hell before, we are now. It's fine.
That's all good. We're all in the same handbasket.
All right.
Very interesting. I did not know that about Lutheranism, because the Lutheranism I've been exposed to, and this might be a synod thing.
It is. Certainly, yeah.
Because the synod that I've been exposed to in my area are very Protestant, not as much Catholic, whereas it sounds like your particular sect basically counts as Catholic light.
Yeah, it really was. So specifically, I was Wells, Wisconsin Evangelical Lutheran Synod.
Okay, because like what we got around here are GLC, I think, and Missouri Synod.
Okay, yeah.
And the Missouri Synod strike me as incredibly Protestant.
Well, I misheard that as misery instead of Missouri.
I mean, nobody's walking out of this church with working legs. Kathy, bass just breaks your fucking knees coming in.
Oh, God. Do we want to do another question, or do we want to keep hammering on Christian sects? Because we could be here forever.
I don't think I want to keep hammering on Jesus. Shall we move on?
Sure. All right.
That one was on purpose.
That one is definitely on purpose. I'm proud of that one.
All right.
Summer after 7th grade, my teacher got married, and a few other students and I were invited to the ceremony at Catholic Church. Everyone else pretty much invited too. Whoops.
Oops, indeed.
Ooh. I'm not gonna lie. If I went up for communion now, I would be so tempted to not swallow the cracker, or to vomit it up again later, because there's so many grimoire things that are like,
right?
So you get a host.
Is it the host with the most? It's kind of
the other thing you definitely should never be surprised by is if I get arrested for taking a chisel to try and take a chip off of the altar where they keep doing communion. Like, you can be sad, you can be disappointed, you can't be surprised.
Honestly, at this point, if you got arrested for almost anything, I probably wouldn't be surprised. I'd be like, and I mean that as a compliment. Like, I absolutely believe that Cabra would do some absurd things for probably very good reasons. Not that I could explain them, but for very good reasons, I'm sure.
I am sure that while I am rotting in ICE detention, I will have the ability to write you my PhD thesis on why I thought it was a good idea to rob a church using only orange soda and duct tape.
You know.
Look, just don't ask any questions. Don't bother bitching about why I've got a saint's toe in my backpack. Just go.
All right. Palate cleanser for a second. Do you have a least favorite wine? If so, why?
Oregon Pinot Noir. Because they keep promising me berries and then it don't taste like berries. Oregon Pinot Noir is the Pinot Grigio of reds. Their soil is so sad that it feels like nothing has died in that soil for like a few hundred years at this point, and it's all just chemical fertilizer. Like, Oregon Pinots, what are you doing?
Reminds me of my experience with that one really, really early on episode Oh God, what was it? It was a rum.
Oh, the Meyer rum?
Yeah. I will never forget the taste of that.
Yeah.
I've never been so close to vomiting on air. Holy shit. How about you, Maleck?
Least favorite wine or least favorite drink?
I couldn't think of a wine, so I just went with drink.
I have 3.
Jesus.
All 2 for the same reason, 1 for a completely different reason. So the first one, and the actual truly least favorite, is I forget who makes it. I'll look it up later. It's a beer called Charles the Hammer. And what what they were going for was it was a beer made specifically for breaking the IBU International Bitterness Units record at the time. It's something like 500 or something, which is well beyond the ability of the human tongue to differentiate. Like at that point, you cannot taste how bitter it is. It's just you're measuring on an artificial scale. What they did is they took, aside from making a pretty bitter IPA in general, they also did a thing where they took alpha acid directly, which is the bittering unit in hops, like the bittering component in hops. They took a concentrate of that and they dry hopped, which is after the beer has been brewed and is fermented, you're just putting in a flavoring agent just to give more flavor. Generally, actually, dry hopping doesn't add any bitterness. It just adds flavor and aroma. It's actually how you want to add most of your flavor to IPAs. But they took the alpha acid and they dry hopped with just straight alpha acid, which is, they certainly got what they were going for, which was breaking the record. They did it. Congratulations. It tasted the best, the best description I have ever heard of that beer is grapefruit stomach acid. And that was kind of being kind because it left out how genuinely, because there's like genuinely it's an acid, like it's very acidic and not in like a fun sour way, just like but then on top of that, it's incredibly bitter, so it's bitter acid at the same time, and it's very, very unpleasant. That's my least favorite beer. My 2 second least favorite beers, and this is not because I think they are bad beers, but rather because they are just so against my personal taste in beer, are Stone Brewing put out a pair of beers called Crime and Punishment. And they are both hot pepper beers that were so spicy, I literally could not handle less than a normal taster worth. Like basically a couple thimblefuls of each of these beers, and it was so hot, I was sweating. I don't think it was necessarily bad. Like someone who enjoys that kind of heat, I think would actually have a really good time with those beers. I think they were probably pretty well done. Stone isn't my particular taste anymore, but like they do good work for the most part. Yeah, no, no.
I just want beer that tastes like a bread, like liquefied bread, like bread water. I just want fermented bread water.
So you need Scotch ales and old ales.
No, I had a Scotch ale. Not only was it an 8%, it was not bread.
Which Scotch ale did you have?
Founder's Dirty Bastard or whatever.
Okay. That's the problem. Because Founders is an American Scotch ale. When I say Scotch ale, you need a Scottish Scotch ale. They don't even have hops.
Well, they won't give me a passport until I pay them like a bunch of money and wait for however long. But once I have a passport, I can go to Scotland, land of the Scots. I'll go drink a beer in Scotland.
I will, when you eventually make it to Michigan, I will make sure I get my hands on some actual, can't be as bad as potato water. Look, Sarenth doesn't like olives and drank olive potato water.
Did for you, motherfuckers.
Cabra, when you eventually make it to Michigan, I will make sure I grab for you specifically some authentic Scottish Scotch ales that you will likely enjoy.
It's on my to-do list.
Also, check out Founder's Old Curmudgeon. You actually might enjoy that a lot more. It's much more bready and less bitter. So
I just want bread water, fermented bread water. That's beer in my head. I know it's not the only beer, but it's the beer that I want.
Finn points out actually one of the most widely available and, in my opinion, it's a very good brand of actual Scottish Scotch ales, Innis and Gunn. Check that out because they're pretty good.
Excuse you.
She's not wrong. Sarenth is like a dog, put it in a bowl and he'll try it.
Yeah. Also, apparently, Finn has tried Crime and Punishment and thought they were terrible and too fucking spicy too. So, okay, maybe I'm not alone there.
It's the I hate myself crowd. Understood.
Okay.
I mean, kind of, yeah.
Do we want to do another magic question?
Yes.
Sure. Okay.
All right. What does your regular praxis look like? Do you pray more or do more magical stuff?
It is more prayer than magic. Ideally, right? Like the ideal for me is that I should be so prayed up that I never have to do spell work again. The goal is to have the energy moving through my life of like, I have prayed 5,000 Maria passa na frente terços, and I have Holy Spirit activated my way to like everything that I need just happens to be right where I need it. And I have to work, right? Like you never get away from work. It's bad for the soul not to do effort, but like, yeah, the goal is to be so prayed up that you never have to do magic. And magic is kind of just the stopgap for like, listen, I understand that I goofed, but could we just like put duct tape on that real quick?
So the goal is basically, to put it in thelemic terms, at least from my very vague understanding, to be so in line with your will that things just happen how they need to happen.
Yeah. But as for actual daily things that I do, my ancestors get coffee first thing every morning, unless something's going on, in which case I'm upset with them. They don't get coffee. Like if I'm having stomach problems and I'm only making 1 cup of coffee for my partner and I'm not making a whole French press, they're getting tea, right? And they're getting whatever tea I'm drinking. So if I'm having chamomile because I've got tummy problems, they're getting chamomile, right? And then similarly, yeah, that's basically it, right? Or if I forget to get coffee because I'm too overwhelmed, they're getting black tea because that's also, or if I make matcha for a pigeon, they'll get matcha, but that's it, right? Like caffeine ancestors every morning. I would like to give them water, but some tiny fuzzy baby refuses not to drink it or knock it off the altar. So I always tell them,
hilarious.
You can get water on your altar when you keep the cat off your altar.
Yeah, my ancestors have specifically invited the cat to drink the water on the altar more than once because I find it, like, I am offended by it, and they think it's hilarious that I am offended by it.
I wouldn't mind if he would just drink the water. It's just he gets up there, and in drinking the water, like, plants fall off the edge. The water moves too close to the edge of the front of the thing, and it's just like, I can't have this in my house. Y'all are getting coffee and tea. But yeah, then I do a lot of studying as a devotional thing. And then a couple of times a week, I'll either do a rosary or I'll burn incense for an angel or I'll sit with a demon, So a couple of times a week, I'll do more involved praying and alignment. But coffee for the ancestors is my daily thing. So.
Do you find in your work that certain times you're doing more work with the demons than you are the angels, and what tends to push that?
So my cycles are very long. Like my cycle through the angels was at least 2 years, and I'm currently ending a 2-year cycle through with the demons. So we're just getting to what the cycle's going to look like. Doing the Babylon ritual with her in chaos was very much like a demonic energy movement of being very in the body, very short-term thinking, very like, why shouldn't I have nice things? And now I've bought the bells, so I'm back to the angels for a hot minute. And I think what it's going to be is roughly a 2 to 3 month cycle. of like, I'm paying more attention to demons, I'm paying more attention to angels, I'm paying more attention to demon, I'm paying more attention to angels. And in the background, right, the background noise to all of this is Mary and the saints, right? Like Saint Anthony has finally become my kitchen guy. Like some spirit finally is able to keep up with me in the kitchen without being like upset by like my cleaning conundrums. And then, you know, I'm just saying Hail Marys every once in a while when I'm overwhelmed with life, like fighting off a panic attack, saying a Hail Mary. Too tired to think straight, say a Hail Mary. Don't know what to do on a Monday evening, pray a rosary, right? Like that's the background noise in between the angelic and demonic stuff.
I get you. I have bouts where ancestor work comes to the forefront, and then bouts where it goes backwards. Like I had a really big bout of ancestor work a couple of months ago, and I actually got. Hang on a second. This was actually blessed for me by a Catholic priest. They had the rosaries they had available somewhere from like the one that specifically my ancestors said pick that one was one from Italy. So I found that really interesting. And that became part of a regular round of prayers I did, and then I fell away from it. And I think I'm coming back into that because I'm doing more work with the dead, or at least I'm coming into a period. I find that really interesting to me because like sometimes you'll get work that becomes front and center, and it is the thing you do for a while, and then it fades to the back.
One thing I'll also say is that being a person for whom my relationship with the angels is very tied to my electional astrology, when I am working more with the angels is for the most part determined on the astrology. Like when the stars are in a really great place, like if the sun's in Aries or Leo, I am angel time, right? When the moon's in Taurus, although weirdly enough, Gabe likes to bother me when the moon is in Scorpio. Like suddenly I have this like weird angel who's just like, hey, it's my day off. Let's talk. And I'm like, it is your day off. Did you hear the first half of that sentence? Right. But Scorpio moons are great for like revolts. And they're like, you like burning stuff down. And I'm like, allegedly, you must speak with my lawyer to get further details.
This is an interesting question and one that I think ties in really well here. Josie asked, do you find that you have more set office hours or spontaneous workings?
I tend to work with set office hours, but, it's not like I am like 3 p.m. every Tuesday. I'm doing this thing, right? It's more like if I am washing dishes with headphones on and music on repeat, it's office hours. Or if I am sitting at my desk and someone wants an incense offering, it's incense office hours, right? So it's not that I have office hours that are set to particular times of day. It's that I have office hours that are set to other mundane tasks that I do on a regular basis. Like Paimon right now is always bothering me in the shower. I know that I need to set office hours with her, him, them outside of the shower, but like that's where we're starting to forge our connection with each other. So my office hours are mundane task gets tied to a form of prayer or alignment instead of like 2 p.m. on Wednesday. We're doing it, you know.
I need to do that actually because I think that will actually work better for me because like I'm trying to have office hours right now and it's not working.
ADHD brain. You got you got to work with process, not numbers. You got to process and location-based memory. It's not gonna work to think about like numbers, right?
Yeah, and like, I always end up busy during my office hours with like mundane bullshit. Yeah. So like, or I'm just exhausted. Like, fuck, it's the weekend. I'm supposed to be doing spirit work. It's 5 o'clock. I'm exhausted because I worked all week.
Right.
Maybe can my office hours be a nap?
The number of times I have gotten a divination where the end result was go take a nap, I cannot even tell you, right? I also definitively leave the door open and I'm like, the last dream of the night, the one that I will remember when I wake up, if anyone has messages, all you have to do is get my ancestors to approve it and you can come by, right? So sometimes my ancestors will ferry messages to me and sometimes they will like let the spirit in. But yeah, I definitely have kind of a set, I'm open to receiving messages time right before I wake up. Although usually what's happening is my ancestors are like, oh, you're going to be late for work. Stress dream. And then I have a dream that people are trying to drag me to a family reunion that I don't want to go to because I'm too busy trying to have like a sex dream or something. Yes, I understand that you're pissed that I'm moving around, cat boy, but I'm on the podcast. He doesn't accept my apology.
Good for him. I think for myself, like in order to keep my sanity going, I actually have to have strict office hours. And it's funny because like if it's in the Google Calendar, we're great. If it's not in the Google Calendar, I won't fucking remember it.
Legit.
So like
we do have two really good questions that I want to answer in the chat. One person,
Yes.
Emily Hall, says, how connected to Christianity do you view the angels? I view them as connected, but that's not their only point of contact. Because the word angelos, meaning messenger, has its roots in Greek paganism. And there's a really expensive book for like $100 on this topic that I want to buy, but I'm not allowed to buy any more expensive books until after I get married. So, but it's on there and it will be there after I get married, or that's what I keep telling myself. But yeah, Judaism, and there's some pagan precedents that lead up to what we call Christian angels. And then Islam also has angels. But yeah, it's a thing.
Angelology and genealogy and the cross currents there are fucking fascinating.
The way that I tend to think of myself from a cultural definition and not a dogmatic definition is that I am a subset of esoteric, heretical, mystic Christianity, mostly having its roots in southern France and Iberia. But that's technical terms. And then someone said angels/demons devoted to rioting and tearing down systems. As far as angels are concerned, I apologize. It's going to be technical because I'm a little too drunk to translate. The archangel of Uranus is a riot angel. They don't care if you're right wing or left wing. If you're going to be deposing a leader or like what have you. Other thing that's really good for revolts, solar and lunar eclipses. So the trick to solar and lunar eclipses is you're not getting the sun or the moon. The thing that you're interacting with is the spirit that's called the dragon's head and the dragon's tail, the southern and northern nodes. There should, in theory, be an archangel, either for both of those or two archangels, one for each. And that one is incredibly potent for political revolts. And then as far as demons of rioting and tearing down systems goes, most of them, like Solus, who's a demon that, am I allowed to say this? Hold on. Who's a demon that my partner works with, is also a protector of criminals, right? And then you have demons of murdering kings and of people who are enslaved rising up against their masters. So some things that are traditionally considered bad in old astrology or demonology, I'm just like, where do I sign? And it was weird because Bolsonaro, have we talked about Bolsonaro yet?
We have not.
Okay.
No, we have not.
So on Sunday, Bolsonaro lost the election, and Lula, don't get me wrong, I'm not here like Lula's our savior. Lula
fuck no.
No.
Lula's a politician.
Right. Lula was a capitalist shill before he got out, like the last 8 years that he served. He's going to be a capitalist shill the next 4 years too. But he's not a fascist military dictatorship asshole. So, you know what? I'll take it at this point. I was really hoping they'd elect Haddad instead, or some other, like, or people would be like, you know what? Fuck Pete. Fudge Centrão. We're going a third party. It's the era of somebody else. And instead, they're just like, nah, we don't know this guy. And it's like, you know, Lula's an asshole. And that's why you voted for him, is because he's the evil you know. But yeah, anyway, we finally kicked Bolsonaro out. And I refuse to be sad about that. But it happened in an eclipse cycle. And it's an eclipse cycle in Scorpio, which is like the spicy, it's a spicy moon. It's like the day off of the moon is moon in Scorpio, that and moon in Capricorn. And We overthrew the standing government, and the old guy got back in. Like the previous establishment dude got back in. So it's just a thing of like, you know, that north and south node, whatever the angels are for that thing, that's powerful stuff. Uranus also. The Archangel Uranus. I said that already. Woo.
Yep.
Had a lot of wine.
You're good. Yep.
Woo.
I think that something important to note too, like that you keep bringing up in the angel conversation and the demon conversation, is that human morality is cool and all, but it's not their concern. They don't give a shit.
Don't care at all.
And that's the thing I keep wanting to bring back to the fore during a lot of our conversations is human morality is nice, but you're talking about beings that are literally older than any empire. They don't give a fuck.
Right. The Archangel of Mars just literally likes to set shit on fire and watch people punch each other. Who's punching each other? Why? Is one person winning or losing? Is this a good reason to be punching each other? Does not give a fuck.
It's not his area of concern.
Right?
That's legit. It's interesting too that eclipses in particular are kind of a, I wouldn't say a special interest because I haven't actually done all the research I need to like understand them in multiple traditions, like a good neurodivergent. But they are like an interesting thing because they are such potent omens in so many traditions, right? Which makes sense.
Wait, we're talking about angels, right?
Eclipses in general.
Eclipses. Okay, I'm following. We're back on track.
You're good. Sorry, I did kind of jump a little hard there.
You're right. You're right, though. Like I think one of the prevailing theories on the swallowing of the sun and all that being heralded as a key cornerstone of Ragnarok is because people saw an eclipse and went, holy fucking shit, the wolves are finally doing it. They're eating the sun. Which, makes total sense.
And it's interesting because they're either omens, like very, very ill omens, or if in the traditions where they're ill omens, you're a taboo breaker and can do that thing, they're powerful times.
Yeah.
Or I want to say I remember at least one tradition where they're good omens, but I don't remember, so don't quote me on that. I could be completely wrong. Also, I end up on the more taboo breaking side of a lot of those traditions anyway, right? Like the wolves eating the sun and the moon. Okay, yeah, and I'm a wolf. That's fine.
Yeah. My two issues with eclipse magic are as follows. Number one, like eclipse magic is like a jackhammer. And let's be real. I am blessed to not need a jackhammer in my life. I am fine with just an impact drill. That gets most of my stuff done. We're good. So like, I don't really need that much revolt. I mean, at least not present and not publicly. But like the other thing is eclipses give me like energetic hangovers.
It's interesting you say that because Jason talks about something similar.
Hey, I can't.
And Jason, who is the luck incarnate, having a bad day is that's a legit thing.
Yeah, no, the head and tail of the dragon are not to be fucked with. Like that's some powerful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing is like, I expected during this eclipse cycle, because we're like smack dab in the middle of one that ends on election day in the US. Like I expected to not hear from the angels. It is a show of how much they love the bells I just got for them that I have been hearing from them at all during eclipse cycle. Because like Scorpio eclipse cycle, I don't expect any angel noise. And instead, they are like, hey, ring my bell. Hey, ring my bell. Hey, ring my bell. And I'm like, it's your day off. That means it's my day off. And they're just like, no, ring my bell. And it's like, I will ring your bell when I ring your bell. You're off until election day.
Which is, I think, intensely funny and ironic.
Yeah. And like for me personally, in both like the heathen tradition that I work in and the pack tradition that I work in, eclipses for me personally are very potent and auspicious days, because of the kind of work that I do, right? Silence being the spirit who primarily initiated me, eclipses is their time, right? That is, can I say this? Okay. So the moon is the maw of the sky in silence, in the aspect of silence, because the spirits overlap like that in ways. So like a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse is just silence is time. It is the dark, and then the moon is even blocked out, or the sun is blocked out by the moon. Silence is just there, very, very present.
I know this book has come up before, but have you read A Witch's Book of Silence?
I have not.
You would like it. I don't recommend that to people unless I know they are incredibly good at grounding and getting themselves out of trance states. But like, I know you'll be fine. But yeah, I don't recommend it as a beginner book, but advanced intermediate level, it's good stuff.
I'll have to check it out for sure.
Yeah. What was the other thing I was thinking about? F me. Nope, I forget. I'm gonna let it go.
Do you mind if I continue for a second?
Yeah, please. My bad.
No, you're absolutely fine. And then the other current that I work in heathenry a lot is with the wild hunt. And I mean, the wild hunt and eclipses is just like, do you want to talk about their time? Like it's, yeah, okay.
Right, overlap.
Yeah. And it's not like pack and wild hunt don't fit like that too. So it's fine.
I find it very interesting that the wild hunt shares tenuous connections with angels and demons insofar as like Perkta's train or entourage is unbaptized children, is the people who refused or were not given the Eucharist. And I find it very intensely interesting that there's this troop of beings that has echoed through the ages unto this point, which are both a force of chaos, but also a force of justice.
Mm-hmm. Also, you want to talk about does not give a shit about modern morality?
Oh, yeah.
Also, you want to talk about not recommended for beginners. Anything to do with the wild hunt, just don't.
Yeah, I'm not good at dead people, so I'm gonna stick to the saints and my ancestors. I know what I'm good at. It's not dead people.
I find it really interesting how, excuse me, a lot of folks tend to operate in one of a couple of camps, and unless really shoved, they don't tend to branch out of that. I think part of it's just like, I've got X and Y amount of time to specialize in this lifetime. But like, I find it really intensely interesting that a lot of these balances, I guess, if you will, are set at loggerheads. Whereas your angels and demons work is an internal balance which you go through of.
I mean, let's be real, because I'm drunk, so we're gonna.
Absolutely.
I want to be a demons guy. That's what I've always wanted to do. I'm an angels guy. The universe has decided that my two skill sets are like analytical reasoning, so like computers,
Sure,
and astrology, and it's like,
Which is
I know that it's the thing I'm supposed to do because it feels like the least cool thing to do. I'm like, that's so normal. That's so mundane. And that's how I'm like, that's what you're supposed to be doing. It's the thing that feels boring because the grass is always greener on the other side. And it's like, you're the astrology guy. And I'm like, I don't want to be the astrology guy. I want to be the super cool goth demon guy. No, I'm the astrology guy.
there's nothing saying you can't be both, though, because like there are several demons that I remember from back in the Clavicula Solomonus that'll very happily work with you on astrology.
Mm.
So it's not like these aren't linked.
You know, that's what I'm learning is that I expected 0% of the demons to be planetary. I expected them all to be elementals, and a lot of them are, but some of them, Astroth being a great example, do have really deep astrological roots. It's like the category of demon as a subset of the category of angel is also a deep miscellaneous bucket in Christian folklore.
I think, sorry to interrupt, but like my brain, I know you don't care for the Kabbalah aspect of ceremonial magic, but I immediately think of Cliffoth. And so many of these demons are the antithesis or the opposite number of so many of these angels. So if you want to put it into the spheres category of being, you're still operating well within a non-appropriative framework. Maybe your chance here is to logic out the illogic of all these different demons that you're now interfacing with, because you actually are interacting with them as beings instead of archetypal forces. You're actually treating them as beings.
Yeah, that's interesting, especially because, and this is the thing I really do love about astrology, nothing that you just said can't apply to the Neoplatonic planetary spheres.
That's the brain connections. Yeah, I was trying to make that point, but light is starting to get to me. But the thing I find most interesting about demons is that they aren't necessarily all tear it down. Some of them are very much swim within.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that I think you're bringing to the table, is that there is a logic and a current of understanding to be had there that isn't just random bomb throwing or random Molotov cocktail throwing, take your pick. Granted, there's some aspects of that, see anything associated with Mars, but there's also a very logistician point of view to some of these beings, right?
Yeah. Some of them are very more like, burn it down. I don't care what. Just set something on fire. Again, Samael. But then there's beings like Laraje. Laraje is a archer. He is very strategic in what he does and very direct. And then you've got beings like Xanthan and Ukobak, who are tenders of the unwell and freshly dead. They're not here to burn things down. They are here to teach you empathy, whether you like it or not, and also to eat all of your deep fried foods.
I mean, honestly, that doesn't shock me, because like deep fried foods are the things you want to eat when you're feeling your feels, right?
Yeah, I mean, also, so Ukobak, background. Ukobak is a demon whose job is to boil people in oil in hell. So if you're dead and you're having a hard time learning empathy in hell before you move on to purgatory, he'll literally just boil you in oil until you learn empathy the hard way. But he's also supposedly the spirit that invented deep fried food.
I'm sorry, my brain just went to, motherfucker, if you're having a problem with empathy, go get some McDonald's fries. Have you a couple of deep fried fucking mozzarella sticks, you're going to feel empathy. Either your bowels are going to catch up to you, or you're going to take enough of a pause. It's not that you're not feeling empathy, you're angry.
It don't hurt. A couple fried potatoes don't hurt. So
we're coming up on 8:38 at the moment. Local time.
Yeah, time.
So we may want to start wrapping up.
Sounds good. I also have to use the restroom, so at some point I'm going to have to kick this cat off my lap. He's been here most of the time we've been talking.
Aww.
He loves me. He's a little fucking guy. He's cold. I'm warm.
All right.
I really want to thank you for coming onto the show and sharing so much of your time and your experiences with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's truly an honor to belong to this community. And every single time I sit there and I think about purging myself from Discord and various religious communities that I'm in, because I have too much on my plate all the time forever, I never think of leaving the like around Grandfather Fire 3 Pagans on Tap communities, just because there is a community there. There's support, there's understanding. And sometimes when I'm looking at issues I'm having in my other spiritual communities, it's actually this community that you all have built, that we've all built together, that reminds me that like there's a chance for growth, that we could find a way to like the community could grow through this, you know. So
I appreciate that. I really do, because I think a lot of it is the soil you're growing, right? Like you're talking about some of the worst wines you've had. It comes down to what soil you're growing that stuff in. What ingredients are you putting in with it? And I think that one of the things that is a hallmark of the work that you've talked about is being intensely careful about the ingredients that you put into your own practice. Whether or not it's the hoity-toity, this is the gold brass vessel, da-da-da-da-da. Like, it doesn't matter if it's paper, it doesn't matter if it's brass, it doesn't matter if it's gold, it doesn't matter if it's an iron knife, ritual knife, butter knife, doesn't fucking matter. What matters is the ingredients you yourself are putting into this pot. And that's one of the things that I've always appreciated about your work, is that you're always coming back to, what are you putting in?
Also, yeah, no, I really appreciate that as well. Like, I know Sarenth and I know Sarenth, Jim, and Caitlin work really hard to make sure that AGF is a sacred fire in every episode. And whether you're sitting down at a sacred fire or sitting down to share drinks with friends, like, these are both sacred acts in a very real sense. And I try to bring that to every episode. Not always successful, but I try to bring it to every episode. And I am very honored and glad to see that it is working, at least to some degree.
The way that I approach a lot of these 3-pot episodes is like a symbol, because we are sitting around, we're drinking, and we're sharing about our gods, ancestors, and spirits. And I'm happy to see that pretty much every broadcast we've ever had is somebody sharing something they weren't sure about sharing. I mean, even in your own case for this episode, you've opened up in ways that you weren't expecting. And sometimes it's the wine talking, and sometimes it's just your spirit with your tongue loosened just enough to let some things out that you normally wouldn't. And I appreciate that this community is safe. And anybody that's drinking along home, please get water.
I've been drinking water the whole time. I was raised by professionals.
Awesome. Thank you. And also, like, if anybody at home has been following along and you feel so inclined, please pour out an offering to the various gods, ancestors, and the spirits that you work with and that we've talked about here. So I want to thank everybody for your time tonight. We will be at the after party, but I also need to use the bathroom, so I'll probably have a delay of a couple of minutes, and I also need to do night prayers with the family.
Yeah, I gotta use the restroom, and then I'll be at the after party, and I will probably continue to become inebriated.
Excellent.
Yeah, it'll be a good time. I mean, who knows? Sometimes people accidentally hit trance brain while they're at the after party, so I might grab my divination tools and see what comes up.
That sounds like a plan.
Sounds good. Got mine right there.
All right.
Thank you all, and have a great night, and we will see you soon.
All right.